Yeah. Good evening. Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting this Wednesday, the 1st of July. I am Councillor Neil Sanderson, Chairman of the committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction and everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I am obliged to read the following notice. There is no fire drill planned for this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask you to make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out to the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate by the entrance of Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return. However, if you have a disability and cannot physically do that, please indicate and we will get an officer to support your evacuation from the building. Moving on to the agenda. The first item of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of June. Are members in favour? Yep. Thank you. Second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We've received apologies from Councillor Mistry. Councillor Corradier is here as a substitute.
Continuing to item 4 and the agenda, applications for... Oh, sorry. Sorry. Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair. It's in relation to application R260065 Lanceria 274 Newbold Road. I am the Ward Councillor for Newbold and Brownsover. I also live very close to this site and I've called in the report. So I'd like to be excused for that.
I would like to make a non-pecuniary declaration of interest on item R260430. It is a non-pecuniary interest. I have no interest in the site and or the properties. Thank you. At that time, I will vacate the chamber and hand over to Councillor Freeman. Continuation on to agenda item 4, applications for consideration.
Thank you, Chair. The first item tonight is R240733, which relates to land within the Custon Lane and then land to the east and west. The application is for the demolition of some existing buildings, alterations to Custon Lane, the formation of a single carriageway road known as the Community Spine Road, which will be in this area, the formation of a temporary access to Cherry Tree Farm, and the construction of footways, cycleways, crossing points and associated works including landscaping and drainage. So this is an aerial photograph of the site showing the existing Cawston Lane. You've got the area of TPO woodland at the north here. You've We've got Northampton Lane here and Alwyn Road. The site photographs, this is at the southern end of Corston Lane looking towards the north, and then this is the northern end, and again here's the TPO woodland. This is Corston Lane looking towards where the proposed junction with the community spine will be, and that will go across these fields. Then this is looking from Alwyn Road towards Dunkley's Farm, and then this is a hedgerow with mature trees that we will refer to later. The application includes alterations to Corston Lane itself, which will be widening. There will be traffic calming, speed limits of 20 and 30 miles an hour. There will be a shuttle working arrangement at the north and an area of split carriageway here. There's also the proposals include the community spine road, which will connect to Alwyn Road via an area of road that was approved as part of the Homestead Link Road application. And then this plan also shows the approved Homestead Link Road at the bottom of the site there. The proposals include footpaths, cycleways, verges and landscaping, and drainage swales. And this is why the application site is as it is, because you have the areas of drainage runs going to balancing ponds away from the main carriageways. The proposals also include the provision of a temporary access to Cherry Tree Farm, as their existing access is affected by the Homestead Link Road. As I've mentioned, there's an area of shuttle working at the north of the site, close to the TPO woodland. And this shows the area with the trees. As you can see here, Corston Lane will be retained at its existing width at this point. Then there was a segregated footpath and cycleway which will move away from Corston Lane through a gap within that woodland. And then this area of carriageway will be signal controlled, and that avoids the removal of the trees in this area, which are covered by the group tree preservation order, and will also reduce the attractiveness of the route to through traffic. There's also an area of the site with split carriageway, which is where there are existing properties on Corston Lane and trees on the other side. The southbound traffic will use the existing Corston Lane carriageway, and then the northbound traffic, the segregated footpath and cycleway and verge will be further west, which will allow the retention of the existing roadside trees, which are shown here as the darker blobs, in the landscaped island in the centre. The key issues to assess with the application are the principle of the development, transport and highway safety, visual amenity and landscape, which includes the impact on trees and hedgerows, air quality, noise and vibration, and protected species and biodiversity. As I mentioned, the site is within the Rugby South West allocation. Local plan policies and the South West Rugby SPD require the provision of a spine road network to enable the development of the allocation. In terms of the road alignment, the local plan policy includes an indicative layout which shows the community spine road connecting to the Homestead Link Road, but states that the design specification and routing will be considered in more detail in the SPD. The South West Rugby Master Plan SPD and Policy S9 of the Submission Local Plan show the community spine connecting to Alwyn Road at a roundabout, as here, which reflects what's currently applied for, and that reflects the plans approved for the Homestead Link Road. The Local Plan Policy DS9, the SPD and the Design Code show the southern part of Corston Lane as a sustainable transport corridor that's not open to through traffic. Policy S9 of the Submission Local Plan, however, shows this as a through route. Notwithstanding the Submission Local Plan, the SPD states that opening this link to all traffic would be likely to encourage car travel to proposed schools, increase traffic along Corston Lane, and result in the loss of trees and hedgerows. The applicants have provided information to address these implications in relation to their proposals. In terms of school travel, Corston Lane itself is to be closed south of the Homestead Link Road, which will remove a direct transport link from Dunchurch. The schools will also be centrally located within the South West Rugby allocation, reducing journeys from within the allocation itself. In addition, the secondary school access is not proposed to be from Corston Lane and will be from Windmill Street, which is part of another application that is likely to come to you in due course. In terms of traffic along Corston Lane, the transport modelling shows that the network will function satisfactorily whether the bottom part of Corston Lane is open to through traffic or not. And the roads have been designed to make the community spine or the strategic road network more attractive routes. For example, the shuttle working, if you're travelling south and wanted to continue along Corston Lane, it's effectively going to be like a right turn. And then there's going to be traffic coming on Corston Lane in the vicinity of the district centre. It would also prevent specific trips into the district centre, as people will be able to stop at the facilities and then continue on their journey. It also reduces pressure on Alwyn Road. In terms of trees and hedgerows, regardless of the use of a through route, these would be affected by the proposals to widen Corston Lane and to provide a footpath and cycleways and bus infrastructure. And we've had no objection from the Highway Authority to the road being used by all traffic. In general highway terms, we've had no objection from National Highways. The County Council, as Highway Authority, made a range of comments. They commented that the traffic modelling shows the proposed road and associated junctions will operate satisfactorily. They will need some work, such as keep clear markings, changes to signals and speed limits, and that will be dealt with through the technical highway approval process. They consider the design is satisfactory, although, as is usual, more detailed plans and a Stage 2 road safety audit will be required at the technical approval stage and secured by condition. The shuttle working section is required to retain the protected trees and to encourage the use of the strategic road network. The county raised queries regarding detection systems, visibility, maintenance and operation in the event of signal failure, and these can be addressed at the technical approval stage. In addition, the overall South West Rugby development will impact on other parts of the highway network, and contributions towards mitigation for this will be secured on future applications in accordance with Appendix K of the SPD. There was no objections from the Highway Authority, subject to conditions and informatives. The local plan also requires the Spine Road network to include comprehensive walking and cycling networks and links to sustainable transport. The proposals for much of the site include a segregated footpath and cycleway to one side of the road with a footpath to the other. Where this is not provided, and that's an area to the north of the junction and close to the split carriageway where there's existing residential properties, crossing facilities are provided to allow pedestrian access to the segregated facilities. Footpath and cycleways will connect to approved links on Corston Lane, Coventry Road, Corston and the Homestead Link Road. During the course of the application, the number of bus stops proposed was increased from 3 to 6 to allow clockwise and anti-clockwise services to be provided, and there was no objection from Active Travel England or the Highway Authority, subject to conditions. There are 3 public rights-of-way which cross the site. There are 2 bridleways which are here, and then a public footpath. The proposal is for these to be retained on their existing alignment with crossing facilities provided, and no objections have been received from the County Rights-of-Way team or the Ramblers. In relation to visual amenity and landscape, the site contains Corston Lane, which is bounded by hedgerows and trees, and other land in agricultural use with hedgerow boundaries which also contain mature trees. The removal of trees and hedgerows, proposed lighting columns and vehicles using the road will be visible from outside of the site and impact on the character of the area, although the planting will reduce the impacts over time. General landscaping plans have been provided and a detailed scheme will be secured by condition. And the Tree and Landscape Officer has no objection to the proposals. In terms of trees and hedgerows, the arboricultural reports identified 24 individual trees across the site, 21 hedgerows, 3 groups of trees, 2 areas of woodland and 2 avenues of trees. And the scheme was designed to retain trees wherever possible. That includes the shuttle working area, the split carriageway and the design at the eastern end of the community spine road, which was designed to avoid the trees that were on the photograph I showed you earlier. The proposals do involve the removal of 4 individual trees, 2 category A, 1B and 1C, and the partial removal of 1 group of trees, 13 hedgerows and small sections of 1 woodland. The hedgerow removals are generally required for the widening of Corston Lane and then in areas to provide drainage ditches. So, for example, parts of a hedgerow would be removed there because there's a drainage run across it, but the rest of that hedgerow has remained. It is mainly the ones down Corston Lane that are affected. As mentioned, the cycleway has been directed through the gap in Corston Spinney to reduce the impact on trees, and this is the part of Corston Spinney that does not constitute ancient woodland. Landscaping and tree planting is proposed across the site, and the landscaping scheme shows approximately 220 trees, and there will also be replacement hedgerows provided along Corston Lane and on the community spine. The tree officer had no objection to the proposals and comments that there will be a low impact in terms of tree losses. In relation to environmental issues, in terms of air quality, dust during construction can be controlled through a construction management plan. The impacts from the operation of the road relate to nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, and all emissions will be within the annual air quality objectives and determined not to be significant. And there's no objection from environmental health. In terms of noise and vibration, noise surveys and modelling were carried out, and environmental health advised that these are acceptable. It did identify some decreases in noise at Corston Lane, which may be due to some traffic using the community spine road. There are increases close to the community spine road, but there are no existing properties in this location. Properties may also be affected by noise and vibration during construction, but these are short-term effects and are not considered significant, and the construction management plan will include measures to control noise and vibration during construction. Overall, there was no objection from environmental health. Ecological surveys and assessments were submitted with the application, and the mitigation is proposed with the landscaping, and this includes an area where there's an enhanced back corridor across the community spine road, where larger species will be provided to provide a back hop-over area. There's been no objection from Natural England and no objection from the county ecologist, subject to conditions. There is a requirement for 10% biodiversity net gain on this application, and the regulations allow gain on land outside of an application site or the purchase of off-site units. The Homestead Link Road, which also forms part of South West Rugby, had an excess of area and hedgerow units due to including a large landscape buffer. So around 7 of the area units at Homestead Link Road can be used to achieve the required 10% gain on this application. 16.32 of the hedgerow units associated with Homestead Link Road can also be used in relation to this application. However, there remains a need for 12.88 off-site hedgerow units and 0.005 off-site watercourse units. These can be secured through the deemed condition, which is on draft conditions, which requires a BNG plan to be agreed. The developments considered acceptable in relation to the impact on heritage assets, neighbouring residents, health, drainage and climate change. Objections were received, as you'll have seen on the agenda, from Dunchurch Parish Council and 24 residents. Many of the objections were combined comments, also commenting on the South West Rugby residential applications and commenting on the overall principle of the South West Rugby development. Some of these comments are also related to the current application and the need and the housing applications and the need for the road to be delivered at an early stage before the housing delivery. Issues related to highway safety, trees, hedgerows, shuttle working and rights of way are already addressed within the report in this presentation, and concerns regarding construction impacts will be controlled through a condition. Some comments requested contributions towards community facilities, but they will be sought through the residential applications rather than the current submission. In relation to the planning balance, as the relevant policies for determining this application are up to date, the tilted balance does not apply. The application must therefore be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Factors which carry weight against the proposals are the opening of Corston Lane to through traffic, the loss of hedgerows and trees, and the impact on the character of the area and wider landscape, and the loss of agricultural land. Factors which carry weight in favour are the provision of landscaping and tree planting, which provides mitigation for some of the negative factors. It will provide infrastructure which will allow the delivery of South West Rugby in accordance with the adopted and submission local plans. It will lead to the social benefits such as the provision of the housing, schools and other facilities which cannot be provided without the suitable road infrastructure. This will lead to economic benefits such as construction jobs, support for businesses and spending associated with future households. There will also be proposed bus stop infrastructure, footpaths and cycleways which will provide access to the wider area. And I've already mentioned landscaping and tree planting. The significant benefits of the proposed development are considered to outweigh the factors against the proposals. The recommendation is therefore approval subject to conditions and informatives as set out in the draft decision notice, with some amendments as set out on the amendment list, with the Strategic Director for Place to be given delegated authority to make minor amendments to the conditions and informatives outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. It's really good and informative. Looking down the objections regarding revised plans, you've had an objection from flooding. I just want to know, there's no objection from flooding, but there seems to be not enough detail regarding the flood risk. So is there a flood risk on that area, because I know it does flood, and also making sure the highway's got like surface water sewers and things like that are going to be added to it.
Thank you. If you look at the comments on the revised plans, we had updated comments from Warwickshire County Council Flood Risk, who had no objections subject to conditions and informatives. So additional drainage information, including plans, technical calculations, that type of thing were provided, which the county lead local flood authority have looked at and have no objections.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't quite catch it on the presentation, but are there any existing sections of Corston Lane that's going to remain as it is, or is it going to be widened all the way along?
The area that's going to, well, it's going to change all the way along. The areas that will remain at the existing width is the northern part where the shuttle working will be, but that will then be shuttle working, so it won't be two-way traffic.
That's brilliant, because, as you know, the council wisely put curbs outside that Corston Lane about 30 years ago, and now you can't get two vehicles to pass one another because it's too narrow. But the other question is trees and hedgerows. Who's going to be responsible for maintaining them?
Are you referring to the landscaping scheme that they will be putting in? I think it would depend exactly where those are, whether they're in part of the adopted highway or whether they are then transferred to the landowners of the adjacent development plots. But there is the condition, as we would always have, that it needs to be put in and maintained for 10 years with any failures then being replaced.
Thank you, Chair. On the section of shuttle working under traffic signal control, what are the inter-green times there and what are the likely delays? I know it said the modelling was satisfactory, but just is it likely to cause congestion on that section?
I don't know what exactly the intergreens and the traffic setup will be. They have modelled it in terms of the queues and they don't consider that it's going to be a level that will be a problem.
Sorry, I've got a couple more. Sorry. Shall I just reel them off? Would that be easier? One more, it's technical. The footway, cycleway joint use, what is the width being retained for the shared use section, please?
So where they're providing the segregated footpath cycleway, I'll have to measure it. I think it's 3 and 2 metres, but I can clarify that for you.
Yeah, I've got one for you. There are objections to the loss of the grade A oak trees from the site. Those adjacent to the proposed pedestrian and cycle route, because bicycles are very handy. They come with handlebars and mobility scooters come with paddles, so they can circumnavigate objects on a pathway. are we just taking these trees out because they're in a straight line? Or is there a justification for the loss of the trees, and will further mature trees be put in elsewhere?
Thank you, Chair. As I mentioned during the presentation, they've taken as many actions we can to retain as many of the trees. There are 2 Grade A trees which are going to be removed as part of the proposals. The first one is going to be located, I think it's to the north of this junction, but it will be within a swale, so a drainage swale. So the difficulty is that when you start doing that level of construction, changes of levels close to the trees, that will harm the trees. And then the other Grade A tree is going to be in the area to the south of the split carriageway, and that is positioned within the road, so within the widened road, so it can't be retained.
So it's within the highway, not in the
Yeah,
pedestrian area.
yeah.
And that's going to be replaced elsewhere?
Well, as I said, the landscaping scheme, so it's not a specific, we are replacing that tree, but we've got a landscaping scheme, and then we will get details of trees to be provided in that, and we'll control that by condition and ensure with our landscape and tree officer that it's a suitable scheme.
Can we turn to our speakers? Can I ask the lady to go first, please? I understand you're in support of the application.
Good evening. My name is Anna Bend and I'm speaking on behalf of Homes England in support of the planning application for improvements to Corston Lane and the new Community Spine Road. The application proposals form part of the key strategic infrastructure required to enable the delivery of the South West Rugby allocation. As policy DS9 indicates, this infrastructure is to be delivered as early as possible. The proposed development is essential for providing access, for delivering the power and utilities infrastructure for the allocation, and for enabling the 3 large residential schemes which are currently being considered by officers to come forward for development. The South West Rugby allocation is central to the Council's delivery strategies as set out in both the adopted and emerging local plan. The Council currently does not have a 5-year housing land supply, and delivery at South West Rugby is therefore crucial to ensure housing needs are met within the next 5 years and longer term, as well as providing employment, schools and community facilities. The proposals have been informed by consultation with the Council, including their tree officer, the County Council and the local community. The scheme has been designed with tree retention in mind, such as opposite Penland where the carriageway has been split. However, ensuring that a safe scheme is delivered has meant that some trees and hedgerow will need to be removed. None of the trees to be lost are protected by TPOs, and we have sought to mitigate this loss by including as many new trees and vegetation within the scheme as possible. The shuttle working was designed to minimise the impact on existing mature trees, with a segregated cycleway looping around part of Corston Spinney that is not classified as ancient woodland. Widening Corston Lane along this section would impact trees which we were keen to avoid. The County Council's comments about the proposed shuttle working are noted, and we will work with officers at the detailed design stage to ensure that their comments are addressed and a safe scheme is delivered. With regard to BNG, it is recognised that 10% net gain cannot be achieved within the application boundary. However, some of the excess BNG units from the Homestead Link Road scheme can be used towards this application's shortfall, ensuring that net gain is achieved. We recognise that the proposals will change the character of the area and wider landscape. However, we have sought to carefully balance the loss of trees and hedgerow and ecology considerations with meeting the County Council's highway and road safety requirements, active travel and public transport requirements, and the needs of existing and future residents. We consider that the proposals achieve this balance. The proposed development complies with the development plan policies for South West Rugby and will result in clear economic, social and environmental benefits by unlocking delivery of the wider South West Rugby allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Rugby Borough Council has set out its vision for South West Rugby in the local plan in the Master Plan SPD, and most recently last July, and now with all party support, in the Design Code SPD. As paragraph 24.8 of the Strategic Director of Places report makes clear, Whitehall's Quango has opted to repudiate your vision for South West Rugby. You voted to stop Corston Lane being used as a main route through thoroughfare for cars through the South West Rugby development. Homes England see it as a principal north-south route. Homes England do not even do you the courtesy of modelling your scheme for Corston Lane. They did model their own free-for-all scheme, and it shows a 7-fold increase of traffic in the morning peak. You voted to have hedgerows retained whenever possible. Homes England want to grub up most of the remaining hedgerows along Corston Lane. We saw in the spring last year the destruction that takes place when Homes England contractors get to work. The oak trees are gone, the hedgerows are gone, the badgers are gone, but there is still no sign of the bypass we were promised. You voted to have routes for cyclists and pedestrians between the homes to the north of South West Rugby and the district centre. Homes England are not providing those. At the critical bend on Corston Lane, Homes England want to collapse the footpath and cycleway to a single path. Scores of school children on foot and on bike moving in both directions on the single footway, less than 5 feet wide, not 2 meters, less than 5 feet, and 7 times the amount of traffic on the lane that there is today. Homes England have presented you with a substandard plan. Tell them this is not satisfactory.
Can I get the officers to reply to this one?
Can I respond to Councillor Stewart's point from before? The combined footpath cycleway is 4 metres. And then I'll find this other bit. Thank you. I believe the speaker is talking about this area at the north of the site, which connects up to Coventry Road, Corston, sort of off the edge of the slide. This is where the Miller Homes L&Q site is that we will actually be discussing later. And as part of those proposals, there was a footpath cycleway being provided to this point. There is then a pinch point, as members are probably aware, where we go round the Severn Trent pumping station and adjacent to the woodland, which is where Severn Trent have recently done works, which is outside of the ownership of the current applicants and Miller Homes. The cycleway link down here narrows to a combined footpath and cycleway, which is 1.5 metres wide, which then ties in to where Homes England have narrowed theirs to join into what's previously been approved. So this has already been considered as part of a previous application, and Homes England are connecting it on the land within their control. Thank you, Chair.
It's over to debate to members. Who would like to speak on it first? Councillor
So.
No, it's
Thank you, Chair. The reason I asked the question about the combined shared space is obviously there are statutory minimums for such, and the creation, well, or the 1.5 metre pinch point would obviously be of grave concern for the safety to pedestrians and cyclists who are trying to and expecting it to be a shared use space. So, I mean, something needs to be done to address that. I understand the land ownership issues, but there needs to be efforts made either through collaboration with Severn Trent or otherwise to ensure that that path can remain consistent for its entire length for safety reasons.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard sort of opposing descriptions of what is going to happen to hedgerows and trees, and they can't both be right, because we were given a description of carefully thought through replacements and carefully thought through areas where what exists will be left. And on the other hand, we've got these will be removed, it will all be gone, it will be, trees will be gone, hedgerows will be gone, birds will be gone. They can't both be right. So I'd like your view really on why you think that discrepancy of thought is there, but perhaps that's not as important as how much of what there is will stay. Thank you.
Okay, can I come back on Councillor Stewart's point in terms of the connection to the north of here has been established by another application. This is tying into that rather than having a 4 metre footpath cycleway, then suddenly stopping, then narrowing to join into what's previously been approved. In terms of the trees and hedgerows, I suppose you could say that both views are right, because the scheme has been designed to retain trees and hedgerows where they can. It is not possible to widen Corston Lane, put in a footway, put in a footpath cycleway, make it suitable for bus traffic and two-way traffic without impacting on particularly hedgerows, as well as I mentioned, 4 trees. So there is an impact on trees and hedgerows, which we're trying to get mitigated through the replacement landscaping scheme, but you can't widen Corston Lane and do those works without having some impact on hedgerows.
Thank you so much. That's made it clear. It wasn't widening Corston Lane that concerned me. It was, I suppose, the volume almost of trees, hedgerows and all the rest of it that would be removed and left and replaced in, albeit in another area with possibly different kinds of trees and hedgerows. But thank you, that's made it clearer.
I think there is a concern regarding the narrowing aspect of the footpath from 4 metres down to 1.5 metres. Usually cycles and mobility scooters and pushchairs, you need the same width so that they can be properly used. If it's down to 1.5, that seems very narrow indeed, and it would be helpful to have further negotiations with Severn Trent on perhaps widening at that point.
Yeah, just to add to Karen's comment on that, that bit's out of our control on this application. That's a part of a previous application, and what this application is seeking to do is kind of taper into that. So it is 4 metres up until that point, where then it's a separate application, and then that's not within the control of this. So it's connecting the two, so you have got that connectivity between the two different sites on this. So that's what we're seeking to do here.
Sir Harrington.
You just probably answered my question there, Helen, but I was thinking, if we're going to have this issue with the safety there, can we put a condition on it? But obviously if it's outside the application, we can't, can we? Because this is the issue we've got. So where do we stand? Because I think it's needed. I think we need better infrastructure in rugby, definitely. We are desperate for it, but that bit there seems a bit over the edge, and I don't know what we can do about it, and how as the council and also councillors try and find out we can try to improve that, because at the end of the day we want to improve infrastructure in Rugby, but then we don't want to have a pinch point which actually could cause more problems is actually solved. So what can we do as councillors? Because at the moment I'm quite confused.
I do find it difficult to understand why active travel will be supporting this narrow route. And that goes, I'll say, and the highways normally determine where we put these things.
I think partly this is the application that includes that route is one that's been approved for some time. I've got the plan in front of me. In what happens is that the cycleway comes down at the pinch point. There is a giveaway marking on the cycleway. There's also an end marking on the cycleway from Homes England. So effectively it narrows to a footpath. And then cyclists then have the choice to go onto the road if that's what they wish to do, or effectively they should dismount for that short section. But as Helen said, and I said before, that was part of a previous application that has already been approved. That is not part of the current application.
Our legal officer wishes to intercede at this point.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to address members, just to put a little bit of the legislative framework and policy framework in your mind. So, Section 116, so paragraph 116 of the National Planning Policy Framework states, development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impact on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. The reason why I've raised that is in a context where you already have the 1.5 metres actually approved, which may be implemented at that developer's request, it's very difficult to say that there's a highway safety issue because that narrow or narrower right-of-way is actually approved development already. So my advice is it would be very, very difficult to proceed and refuse this application on that basis. Happy to answer questions on that point, but I thought it was useful to put some of the policy framework just in the minds of members. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, and thanks for the comments there. I understand it's linked to a previous application, but you cannot advertise a bi-directional cycle and footway and then let it go down to 1.5 metres. It doesn't meet the statutory guidance for such a shared space. So I appreciate what you're saying, but if the pinch point creates an element that is not compliant, that is manifestly a safety issue on the public highway and should be given due consideration, in my view.
I mean, I don't think they're saying that it is then going to be a 1.5 metre shared space, shared footway, cycleway. They're saying at that point the cycleway ends. Highways have not raised an objection to this, and that's who we have to take our technical advice from. So that's what's included in the report and recommendation.
Just perhaps, yes, I know we can't change the previous application. I know we can only go with the applications that's before us. However, if we do believe there may be an issue and we want to talk to highways, we could, if we wished, put an informative expressing our concern.
Yeah, informatives aren't sort of set in stone though. It's an ask rather than we'd like something a bit stronger. So my point on this was, obviously because this argument could go on and on with this bit, with regards to trees and hedgerows, the plan for which ones are removed, when we've had trees and hedgerows removed for the Homestead Link, preparation for the Homestead Link,
my inbox just skyrockets with emails of they're taking down the wrong tree, they're taking down the wrong hedgerow, why they're doing this, why they're doing that. It would be really helpful if there was quite a detailed plan that went to the parish council and the councillors that then we could then refer to, that when we get those queries can say, actually, no, that one was supposed to be taken away, that one wasn't. Because it's very hard when you're looking at something like Horston Lane to know, as you drive down it, which hedgerows are supposed to be there and which ones are supposed to be taken away. So I think from a communication point of view, when we had the Homestead Link application, I asked for a contact from Homes England that would be a point of contact for us and for the parish council. I've never had that, and I'm fairly certain the parish council haven't had that. It just saves a lot of grief for everybody down the line if there's something clear that we can refer to and the parish council can refer to. So if this gets through, is it possible that we could have that just to make everybody's lives and the communication a bit easier?
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to go on the plan.
Yeah, Councillor, sorry, Helen Nightingale, sir. I haven't promoted you yet.
So can I come back on the plan? You probably can't see it so well on the screen, but this is the plan that shows the tree and hedgerow removals of the hedgerows, like along Horston Lane, are coloured in orange. So I can certainly give you the links to those or the parish council, so you've got that as and you can then zoom in to. If you get a query about what's supposed to have happened here, that should show it without you having to go through the tree report, because I think the actual tree survey plans are on about 22 different pages, which is why I asked them to produce this, so that it's easy for people to understand and for me to understand what's actually happening.
Yeah, and if it could, because the existing houses that are there at the moment don't show on that plan. Or do they, and I just can't see them?
They probably show on the plan if you have it and zoom in better to it. It's because of it being on the display.
Okay, all right.
And just to go back to your point about the Homestead Link and the comms around the trees, absolutely my inbox blew up as well. That all the way, our tree officer was going on site and making sure everything was done correctly. We were talking to Action for Dunchurch as well, constantly around that, and there was a contact for Homes England given. But what we can do is absolutely, lessons learned from that, provide more detailed information to the parish council to say this is when it will happen. Homes England have learned from this as well. This is how it's going to be managed this time. And I think what happened on Homestead Link Road also kind of spurred on about the design of Horston Lane, about the tree. Try and save as much as possible. It's going to cost more because of the fact that there's more carriageway, because they're avoiding certain areas of trees and TPOs and the spinney. So, it really has been the centre of kind of the design on this, and we are really keen to ensure moving forward that when it comes to, if approved on that delivery element, that it is communicated correctly and everyone is well aware in advance of what's going on. So, absolutely on board with that.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we will move to the vote. Do we have a proposer and a seconder for the application? Councillor Freeman?
I'll second that.
Don't all rush at once.
I'll second the proposal.
This application relates to Oakfield Primary School on Oakfield Road and has been reported to committee as it was called in by Councillor Ish-Mistry. Proposes the removal of the existing gas-fired boiler plant at the school and the installation of an air source heat pump system. This plan shows the school and where the air source heat pumps and enclosure are proposed. This is a revised plan that was received during the processing of the application. The original plan had a detached enclosure on the sort of grassed area, which was closer to the neighbouring residents. So the key issues are the noise impacts, which is the possible impacts on the nearest residential receptors, which are here, around 30 metres to the northwest of the site, and the visual impact of the proposals. Here's a photo of the site, and then the enclosure would go in here, sort of tucked in next to this sort of rear projection, and that shows some of the residential properties and the land level change. Here's the air source heat pumps and an example of the enclosure, which, as I mentioned, will be now joined to the back of the school. The modelling indicates that the noise from the air source heat pumps at the nearest worst affected receptor has been calculated at 27 decibels during the night or 33 decibels during the day, and the nearest receptors are marked on that plan. And as you can see, those are separated by trees. This is the elevations showing the enclosure. It's estimated that the air source heat pumps will reduce the operational emissions of the school by around 70 to 75%. The principle of the development is clearly established as the works are ancillary to the existing school use and will directly support its transition to a low-carbon economy. In addition, it makes a direct and positive contribution to climate change, consistent with the Council's Climate Change Emergency Declaration, the NPPF and policy, and these factors are considered to carry significant weight. The design and visual impact of the air source heat pump units is considered acceptable in this location and would not cause material harm to the character and appearance of the area. In relation to noise, no objection was received from environmental health, subject to a suitable condition. And then the proposals will not give rise to any unacceptable levels of noise and disturbance to neighbouring occupiers, and there are no factors which carry weight against the proposals. The recommendation is therefore approval subject to conditions. Thank
you. Just one question. Was there any thought put into having ground source heat pumps? Because that would eliminate the noise then. Because it looks like there's... Well, yes, it's because that's clearly the better option. And you've got lots of ground out there where you could lose your pipe work and all the rest of it.
I mean, I don't know the thinking of the school. I believe that would be significantly more costly because of having to dig up the ground. And I know there is still some plant associated with it. But as I mentioned in the presentation, in terms of noise, environmental health are happy with the level associated with what's proposed.
Okay.
Councillor Gillias does raise an interesting point. I've, in a previous professional life, had to deal with ground source heat pumps, and the amount of disruption on site involved is quite considerable, as you have to dig down to a minimum of 14 metres below ground level in order to access an ambient temperature of 14 degrees. You don't have to do that with air source heat pumps. So that should be a consideration.
Mine's a very basic question, really. It's what equates to... Give me an example of something that's 7 decibels or 20 decibels or whatever it was that it was, 7 to 20. So what's that? It means very little to me unless I've got something to relate it to. I'm sorry.
Let me find out for you. It was around 30.
Oh, it was around 30.
Chair, I may be able to assist because I have a decibel meter on at the moment. And the ambient noise level within this chamber is between 50 and 65 decibels. So under 40 or 30 decibels is considerably quieter.
Thank you, that's helpful. That's really helpful, thank you.
Okay. I was going to say, I found a scale that says 30 decibels is a whisper or light snoring. We've probably found the same.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any, we'll go into debate. Is there any?
This is the debate bit, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, if they're going to save 70 to 75% on their energy costs and schools are strapped for cash as it is, I am more than happy to approve this.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to second that from the chair. This is a good news story. Reducing the emission, the consumption of fuel emissions by 70% from an educational establishment is really very good. And hopefully it will save the school considerable amounts of money as well, which they can put back into education. So I'm more than happy to second this proposal.
I have a bit of a different point of view in this one. I believe there is some electricity involved in using this airflow heat pump. And what is the difference between them using the gas and the electricity? What I was told from listening to Radio 4 is, yes, air source heat pump is good for the environment, but it's not good for the pocket. So how is that we were sold that this is very economical way of dealing with these things? The second question I want to ask is, yes, we had 50 to 65 decibel in this one, but have you ever slept next to a person who is snoring all night?
Really?
Right? So how irritating it would be for a family to be there in that presence. So with this one in
So we're just getting a proper answer on what was the
So the first question was about the efficiency of the air source heat pumps. Yes, they do use electricity. I'm not a technical air source heat pump expert. My understanding is that if you compared the overall emissions related to burning gas and using air source heat pumps are preferable. In addition, the school has solar panels, so a lot of the time in the daytime when the electricity is being used to run the units, that will be electricity being generated through the solar panels, which again reduces the impact. In terms of decibels, it was 33 during the day and 27 during the night. And as I said, environmental health considered that level is acceptable. So.
I think it would be helpful if you could clarify where the decibels will be measured in terms of this application, because there's a significant difference between the decibel level next to
at the noise receptors.
Something that's 10, 20, 30 meters away.
It says it will be, I can't speak because your thing's still on. Sorry. I think that's the decibel levels at the nearest receptors, so not standing next to the unit.
So the nearest houses are how far from these?
About 30 metres.
Okay, so in terms of disturbance of the neighbours, we're looking at considerably less than the number of decibels recorded at the point of origin of the noise. Yes, is that correct? Thank you.
seriously disturbed by somebody snoring 90 feet away from them in the garden. So I would say this is a positive scheme. This is it is a good climate change proposal. It will I believe save the school money, and it moves on. This is in a public building as well, being retrofitted. That's a rarity in itself. So I would ask members to support the application as it stands.
So we have a proposal. That's been seconded.
Yeah, was it, well, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Brown proposed and I seconded.
Simpson Vince.
Well, whichever.
And you seconded it?
Yeah, I seconded. This. Don't pour it properly. Right, I want to. Have a motion on the table now.
I think we should just go to the vote on the motion.
I think we should go to the vote on the motion we have in front of us. Okay. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Thank you. That was carried.
I may be excused, Chair. Thank you.
Two 6 double for New Bold Road, where Councillor Freeman has declared an interest but wishes to speak on behalf of the residents as a ward. Councillor.
No, he's not registered to
He's
speak.
not speaking.
He's not registered
He's
to
not
speak.
speaking.
He's not registered to speak.
He's just
Yeah, he's not.
There's a
No, he
conflict.
hasn't registered to speak.
Registered to speak. Right. Okay. We start on this one then.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a proposed new build bungalow to include parking and landscaping on land to the rear of 274 Newbold Road. The application has been called in by Councillor Freeman due to concerns regarding the proposed development constituting overdevelopment of the site. The application site comprises of a large area of hard standing and a single-storey garage located within the Newbold and Rugby urban area. There is a row of mature trees protected by a tree preservation order to the south-east boundary. On the front boundary is a mature hedgerow. The application site is accessed off Newbold Road. The image to the left-hand side and to the northwest is a terrace of properties to include 272, 274, 276, 278 and 278A Newbold Road. The image to the top right-hand side is to the northeast and includes several small terraces on Morris Close. The image to the bottom right-hand side is to the southeast is 250 Newbold Road, and to the south is southwest across the highway is Avon Valley School. Several technical consultees were consulted. The Environmental Health Department, Trees and Landscape Officer, Ecology and Warwickshire County Council all provided a response of no objection. Councillor Freeman called in the application and two neighbours provided a response. The neighbour in support had no objection to the bungalow but did request that permitted development rights are removed for future extensions, roof alterations and outbuildings facing neighbouring properties to maintain control over privacy. They also requested for the TPO trees on the boundary to be protected. One neighbour objected. Their concerns included that the development was not in keeping with the surrounding area or properties, highway safety issues, the impact on public services to include drainage and water supply, the effect on the existing tree cover, impact on a public right-of-way. The public rights of way relates to a neighbour's access, not a county council public right-of-way, and therefore this would be a private civil matter. Regarding the principle of development, the local plan is now more than 5 years old and the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Therefore, the tilted balance is engaged and decisions should apply a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The new local plan for 2025 to 2042 has been submitted for examination and currently carries significant weight in decision making. Policy GP2 and Policy S1 of the submitted local plan advises that the Rugby town area is the most sustainable area within the borough and is therefore the main focus for development. Policy GP3 states that the council will support the redevelopment of previously developed land where policies are compliant with the policies within this local plan. The existing site includes an area hard standing and a garage, which is visually stark and unsightly. The proposed dwelling is of an acceptable size and scale, being single-storey, and is well positioned within the plot. The dwelling is of simple design, constructed of red brick and slate effect concrete roof tiles, and will include a feature oak porch and brick headers above the windows. The bricks and tile will associate well with the neighbouring properties, in particular the end of terrace neighbouring property to the northwest and a bungalow to the southeast. The development will comply with the space standards as the dwelling will provide 70 square metres of internal floor space, which is greater than the recommended 61 square metres. The dwelling includes a double bedroom and the bedrooms all exceed the recommended width and internal floor area. The recommended distance between opposite facing windows at the same level is 21 metres. The distance required may be greater if, for example, upstairs windows of a 2-storey dwelling afford views into windows at a single-storey level. Although separation distances are approximately only 10 metres to the neighbouring properties 272, 274, 276, 278 and 278A Newbold Road, due to the size and scale of the the dwelling being a bungalow and the boundary treatments, fencing which provides screening, the proposed development will not have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring properties regarding privacy, loss of light or being overbearing beyond what is usually expected for this type of development within a residential area. Permitted development rights will be removed to prevent extensions and alterations to the roof. The property is a 2-bedroom dwelling with provision for parking 2 vehicles. There is also parking provision and pedestrian access for 274 Newbold Road, which they're the parking spaces and the access goes around there. The Rugby Borough Council Climate Change and Sustainable Design and Construction SPD advises that new dwellings should provide an adequate amount of garden space that is in keeping with the character of the area. The rear garden will be 17 metres in width and the front and rear garden combined will be larger than the footprint of the dwelling. So the garden is here and then there's a front garden here. There's no standalone planning policy which says development must not be overdevelopment. The bungalow is of an appropriate size and scale and will sit well within the plot. The impact on neighbouring amenity has been assessed and it's considered that the harm would not be at a level which would warrant a refusal. The volume of the bungalow complies with the national space standards to include the garden and parking provision. In comparison with new development at Ashbourne Gardens, which provides a guide of what is acceptable garden housing layout, the density of housing is far less. Let's just point here that this plan, this is a site application here, and there is actually a bungalow that's approved here. Warwickshire County Council Highways consider that development will not create a significant intensification of the access. They do not envisage that the proposed development being detrimental to the adjoining highway. As the application site is located within the designated air quality management area, environmental health requests a condition to be included in the decision notice, the details required to achieve air quality neutrality. Environmental health also requests conditions for the submission of a construction environmental management plan, a previously unidentified contamination condition and a noise assessment. Ecology have requested for conditions to be included to ensure there is a 10% biodiversity net gain and a condition to address the potential loss of habitat. The Trees and Landscape Officer has no objection subject to condition within decision notice for a finalised arboricultural method statement and tree protection plan for the protection of the retained trees. Conditions will be included for the property to provide broadband and mobile internet and to limit the amount of water use. The development is also acceptable regarding potential flood risk and drainage and matters relating to equality. In conclusion, the proposed development is acceptable in principle. The application site is located within the urban area where occupiers of the dwelling would have opportunity to use and contribute to the local community by using shops, services, public transport and recreational facilities, therefore meeting the 3 overarching objectives of sustainable development, which include economic objectives, social and environmental objectives. The development will provide a dwelling which will contribute to addressing the Council's current shortfall of housing provision. The proposed dwelling is considered acceptable in regards to principal design and regarding the potential impact on any neighbouring properties. The dwelling will not have an adverse impact on highway safety and will provide suitable on-site parking provision. Additionally, there will be no adverse impacts on landscape, environmental health matters or protected species and biodiversity. The application also accords with the National Planning Policy Framework, the local plan and submission local plan regarding community infrastructure levy development will be chargeable development. The recommendation is that the development be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's on condition 9. How do you limit 110 litres per person per day? And how do you know if it changes if someone else moves in the house or someone moves out of the house? Just, I don't, it's probably been in a condition before, but I don't remember seeing it, so I'm just asking the question. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. It's a standard condition that we put on pretty much all dwellings. There's ways of doing it. You can have, the taps where you press and they flip back up, so it limits water rather than having it switched on and running, for example, when you're brushing teeth. There's also as well showers which have used less water. I appreciate, like you say, it's very difficult to tell. I think there's, especially with new dwellings now, generally they have a water meter, don't they, as well? So, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's a requirement through, as it said there, through building regulations, but it's a strange bit of legislation that we as a planning system have to put it on in order for it to be able to be enacted by building regs. And like Paul has mentioned now, I don't know if you go, but if you go to a DIY store, you'll often see now taps and showers that will have certain limiters on, and it's all to do with building regs now and meeting the requirements.
So it's dealt with at consumer end rather than something that the builders do.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So just the condition 9, I was thinking of grey water systems which you could use for the garden and toilets and things. But I can't see how you could put a meter in there for a dwelling that has this diameter.
I mean, obviously, I'm not quite sure what you're implying, Councillor Anderson, but obviously new builds now have water meters put on them.
Yeah.
So obviously they know the usage, but the purpose of the condition is to try and limit that usage per person. It's 110 per person. So if it's one person, obviously 110. Obviously, if it's 4 people, it's 440 is the limit. So in accordance with building regulations, so it's not that
it's an aspiration.
It is,
it's not
and it's not 110 that has to be shared between 1 or 4 people.
It wasn't me 1 point, it was 2 points. First point is regarding the if they want to build any extra extensions. So that's going to. Oh, sorry, I was leaning back. Question regarding the conditions regarding they can't extend it any further. So basically, that is in this. So if the residents try to want to make an extension and things like that, then that cannot be done. So obviously, the residents who obviously ejected, they're going to be obviously put their minds at ease. Secondly, Severn Trent will get in contact with you if you've got a water leak. I had a water leak, and they'll get in contact with you via phone or email. I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Are there any other points?
Yeah, through you, Chair. There is condition 4, and that will prevent A, extensions, or classes A, sorry, extensions. AA, which is the extension above another floor. B, which is roof alterations, which means, for example, hip to gable. And C, which is things like dormers and roof lights. This was put on with conditions. We have to be reasonable. The only one that wasn't included, which the neighbour asked about, was outbuildings, and the reason is because, generally speaking, they'll be single storey. It would prevent things like sheds and stuff. There's not a lot of land on there anyway, so anything that's single storey I don't think would impact on the neighbouring property. They have to be a certain size. It's kind of been accounted for.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's opposite the school. Is there any conditions we can put on for site traffic, vehicles backing into the site, really, sort of, you know, after 9 p.m. and before 3 p.m?
It's very difficult. At the moment, obviously, there's an access there. Warwickshire County Council Highways have been consulted. They believe there won't be an intensification on site. I think there's probably two things. One is it'd be quite difficult to enforce because somebody would have to be out there. And again, two, because highways have said that they think it's not an issue or maybe that it's acceptable, the access there for what will be used.
If there are no further technical questions, we'll move into debate.
Nobody seems to be objecting to this from a technical point of view, so I'm happy to move approval.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the application. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Freeman. I will make any decisions.
Where are you?
Right, once again, I'm here off the subs bench. Okay, so...
You ready?
Not quite. I've got to scroll down a couple of pages. Okay, this next item is R260430, land south of Coventry Road and Corston Lane, Coventry Road, Rugby. Variation of condition 1, and it relates to the number of affordable housing units which will be delivered. I think we'll have some technical clarifications and then the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned by the Chair, this refers to land south of Coventry Road, which is here, and Corston Lane, which we were just discussing earlier. This is also part of the South West Rugby allocation. It relates to the variation of condition 1 of R240971, which was the Reserve Matters scheme for this site, and this is to refer to 9 affordable housing units, which will consist of 8 affordable rent and 1 shared ownership, instead of 63 affordable housing units, which were previously approved. Just getting my pointer for when we need it. So this is the junction of Coventry Road and Corston Lane, and as part of the proposals, this will be upgraded to a roundabout, and this is looking from the site entrance into the site, which has been cleared because they've carried out a lot of archaeological works. As I mentioned, there's been previous permissions for this site. The outline application was submitted some time ago and was submitted by L&Q Estates, who are now known as Catesby. And the Reserve Matters application and the current application have been submitted by Miller Homes. So this shows the previously approved Reserve Matters scheme, which had 210 dwellings. It had 63 affordable dwellings, which are shown on here by the blue for 20 shared ownership, and the red, which were 43 affordable rent. So that's over here and also some closer to the entrance at this area. This is the proposed revised plan, which, as you will see, is exactly the same in terms of layout and design. So there's been no actual changes to the sort of physical built development proposed. It remains as 210 dwellings in total, but now it's proposed to provide 9 affordable dwellings, which is 4.28%, which, as I said, will be 8 affordable rent and 1 shared ownership, and those are in this part of the site here. This is an application for the variation of condition of the previously approved scheme. So the only matter to consider now is the proposed changes to the affordable housing. All other matters, including the principle of the development, the design, highway safety, biodiversity, etc., were considered at the outline and reserved matter stages. In policy terms, the target provision of affordable housing is 30%. However, our policy does state that the target levels will be expected to be provided unless the local planning authority is satisfied by robust financial viability evidence that the development would not be financially viable at the relevant level. A financial viability assessment, or FVA, was provided, and this was independently assessed on behalf of the council. The site forms part of the South West Rugby allocation, and contributions towards strategic infrastructure are required in accordance with the South West Rugby SPD, which leads to higher Section 106 costs than if this was a standalone site. For example, they'll be paying a contribution of the cost of the secondary school for South West Rugby, the GP surgery, the Corston Lane and community spine works that we discussed earlier, and so on. The financial viability assessment detailed that there had been higher than expected costs to provide the Coventry Road and Corston Lane roundabout, and significantly higher than anticipated costs for archaeological works, and there was also abnormal foundation, retaining wall and drainage costs. There was also additional costs due to changes to requirements since the outline planning permission was granted, such as building regulations changes, the requirement for EV charging for properties and the building safety levy. There's also increased costs due to the global economic situation, and the applicant's FVA showed the development was not viable at 30%. The FVA was independently reviewed on behalf of the council, and the reviewer confirmed it had been carried out in accordance with the relevant guidance. The reviewer accepted the sales values and build costs provided in the FVO, but raised some queries, including the target profit, the build programme and the fees. The reviewer then carried out their own FVA using their assumptions, which showed that 2 to 3% or 4 to 6 units of affordable housing could be delivered. The FVA submitted was scrutinised in detail, with all the costs detailed looked at and discussed, and a revised FVA was submitted by the applicant with updated archaeology costs and Section 106 costs, and this was after going through all the Section 106 costs with officers, and at the conclusion of archaeology work they knew the cost rather than having it as an estimate. The applicant still considered that the development was unviable with either 30% affordable housing or if no affordable housing was to be provided. Again, the council's reviewer carried out an updated FVA using their assumptions, and they considered that 9 units of affordable housing could be delivered. The applicants therefore agreed to provide the 9 units suggested by the council's assessor, And this will be 4 one-beds, 3 two-beds, 2 three-beds, and as I said, 8 social or affordable rent and 1 intermediate. The local planning authority are satisfied that robust financial viability evidence has been provided and that it would not be financially viable to provide higher levels of affordable housing. And this accords with policy H2. Policy H2 of the submission local plan includes a different requirement than the adopted local plan, as it states where target levels of affordable housing are not provided, the council will include mechanisms within the legal agreement to allow mid-development and or post-development viability reviews, which may result in the requirement to deliver additional affordable housing if the situation has changed. It's therefore proposed to include reviews at 50% and 75% of occupations, where financial viability assessments have to be submitted within the 106. These will then be independently assessed again, and if they show that viability is improved, more affordable housing on-site or an off-site affordable housing contribution will be required to be agreed with the council. In relation to the planning balance, the lack of 5-year housing land supply means that the application must be assessed in terms of the NPPF's tilted balance, where permission must be granted unless adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The benefits of the scheme include the delivery of 210 homes, including 9 affordable homes, which would assist with the current shortfall. It will also make contributions to the provision of community facilities, including schools within South West Rugby, and it would make contributions to strategic road infrastructure, including the delivery of the roundabout at the end of Coventry Road and Corston Lane. There will also be economic benefits of construction jobs and spend and positive impact on the local economy from future residents. And there will also be the provision of on-site open space and links to the wider area. There will be the adverse impact in terms of the reduction in affordable housing. The benefits are considered greater than the adverse impacts, so the adverse impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. It's therefore recommended that the application be approved, subject to the conditions and informative set out in the report, and the completion of a deed of variation to the legal agreement attached to R180936, which will secure the proposed level of affordable housing and will also include the viability review clause as outlined, with the strategic director for place being given authority to make minor amendments to conditions and informatives, and, in consultation with the committee chair, be given delegated authority to add, vary or remove any of the financial contributions or obligations outlined in the heads of terms. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So whether to allow a revised scheme that reduces the number of affordable housing dwellings from 60 down to 9. Can we have the technical questions first, and then we'll move on to what will no doubt be a lively debate.
What would be the profit or loss on if they had all the social houses? Because it'd be interesting to see what percentage of profit would have made if they actually did what the plan actually outlined.
The viability assessments allow for them to make a profit. The applicants wanted to pitch that at 20%, and our assessor wanted it at 18.5 on the market dwellings. So the assessments run using that as an assumption. At the 30%, I think the overall sum was something like minus millions of pounds. I can find out exactly what it was. So it's like if you had this profit and you had all your costs and you paid for your land, it was a negative value, quite a significant negative value, which is why our assessor was saying to follow all those assumptions, he felt you could afford the 9.
Okay, so that's going to be, but the problem is Miller Homes make a lot of money and they pay a lot of shareholders. So for me, I'd be interested to see the actual figure, how much is it minus by compared to what they do at the moment. But if you can't answer that question, that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, just to supplement that, the MPPF and the MPPG allow for a profit margin to be made on development. That's what makes development happen. There needs to be an interest for the developer. I think on this particular scheme, there have been quite a lot of market factors which have considerably changed since, I think, 2022, when the L&Q permission was originally granted. And this is also part of, it's the first framework Section 106 on the South West Rugby allocation. So it was the first one of its kind for this. So you have a framework, Section 106, which contributes to all strategic infrastructure for every Section 106 on the South West Rugby allocation, and then there's this part 2 which looks at site-specific points. But on the Section 106 for the South West Rugby allocation, as outlined in Appendix K of the SPD, the strategic costs are high. They're higher than they would be for a 210 dwelling site elsewhere, because you are contributing to way more infrastructure, new schools, not extensions to schools. And so when you look at the figures, you know, there has been about a £3 to £4 million higher bill in terms of when it was approved to now with market factors. And that also includes the abnormals such as archaeology and highways. So the archaeology bill was quite high, abnormally so, and same with the highways. But these are matters which we're hoping and we will be mitigating for future Section 106s. So it's kind of learning from this first framework, Section 106. We as officers have challenged and interrogated the financial viability assessment on 2 occasions for this with our independent assessors, and really have tried hard to ensure that there's as much affordable housing. But as we said, there is review mechanisms to revisit this at 50 and 75%.
Simpson, Vince, and then Councillor Daly.
I appreciate this is the first one that's come through under this South West Rugby framework. So do we think, we've got 2 roads, we've approved one tonight, we've got 2 roads that haven't been built yet. Those costs could go up. You know, we have a policy that says what affordable housing should be, and the first one come through has dropped massively. It's not even dropped a little, it's dropped massively. So we're going to be going effectively against that policy if we accept this. So are we likely to, is this like the start? I appreciate you said we're trying to mitigate going forward, but we don't know what the costs of the roads are going to be. We don't know what the cost of the school is going to be, because it depends when they're built and what the construction costs are at the time. So is this going to be a case of, we could get developers coming in going, I'm going to build 150 houses here, 300 houses, yes, I'll do your 30%, and then we get this 12 months later? Just your professional opinion, really.
I mean, it's a very genuine concern, and it's something we've definitely thought about as officers across the wider SUE. I mean, unfortunately, with SUEs of this nature, and we found at Halton, you know, there's a review mechanism with no affordable housing provision. You know, they are very expensive to build, and it's weighing that need for homes against, you know, all the other infrastructure needs in schools. It's something we are trying to mitigate and ensure that that doesn't happen for the rest of the applications. This is just a bit of an anomaly, I think, in terms of the passage of time. Who secured the Section 106 in the first place wasn't the people who were actually delivering the scheme. So there's an element of that, and things have moved on, but we're very mindful of that circumstance, and it's something we as officers are trying to ensure isn't the case moving forward. And there's lots of background discussion about how we ensure that, with costs spiralling left, right and centre for all of this kind of development, how we ensure there is affordable housing on site.
Can I just clarify as well, because you mentioned at the beginning about it being contrary to policy, and it's not, because the affordable housing policy at local and national level does allow viability reports to be submitted and robustly challenged. So, yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, it's not against policy.
And just to clarify the earlier point, am I correct in understanding that when the viability test is done, a net profit of around 15% is allowed for? 15 to 20?
Yeah, the guidance in the National Planning Policy guidance is 15 to 20. As I mentioned, Miller's started saying with the starting point of 20, our assessor felt that 18.5 was reasonable. And the initial assessment, was it Councillor Harrington that asked me, the initial assessment was showing that they were, I've now lost it, hang on, there's so many. that one. The deficit was around £8.1 million.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask the exact same question that Councillor Simpson-Vince asked. It is a real concern, isn't it, that I think we saw these viability assessments from the developer pop up last summer. I do fear, I know we're not in debate, but I do fear that this is the start of us having this problem for all of these developments on South West Rugby, and maybe this is the start of us seeing we're not going to have any affordable housing effectively on South West Rugby, which is definitely not what we intended when we set off on that. I haven't really got anything to ask further because obviously Councillor Simpson-Vince has asked that, and Helen's thank you, already kindly answered. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, please, and then Councillor Carriby.
I agree with the two previous speakers. I think it's extremely disappointing, and I understand why. And I think it places a huge emphasis on the criteria for review at 50 and 75%. If we can ensure that those reviews are really robust, that might mitigate it a bit. But with an eye to the future, I know you said this is an anomaly in terms of the process, that, you know, the way this has come through to us today. You know, it's different. It's kind of switch providers. It's hopefully we won't meet this kind of thing too often, but potentially what people have described already could happen, could well happen. So we have to be canny in thinking through what we can do to secure some social housing places, whether that's criteria for bids, whether, I don't know yet, but there's something that needs to be addressed there. It's a very serious issue.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just to come back on that, so absolutely taking this very seriously. On this site particularly, as you said, the archaeology costs were extraordinarily high, and not normally then, we're talking millions here, which we are trying to address, well, we have addressed through with Warwickshire County Council, and the same for the cost of the roundabout, the implementation of the roundabout, where we have already tried to mitigate against that for future developments, because actually Warwickshire were requiring a certain contractor to deliver the roundabout, which increased the costs by over £1.5 million. So those kind of processes have affected the viability of this site and things that we are addressing for future sites on here. So that's kind of some of the abnormals for this particular site that we've come across, and we are now moving forward.
Can I just double check something I think you said, but, you know, being an elderly lady, my hearing's not always all that correct, but did you say that county had insisted on a particular provider for the roundabout?
They have a process in their technical team around, they have a list of approved contractors that are to deliver schemes for their highways, which is now changing. So that kind of, these things have been raised to us as the planning authority, we didn't realise, but things are changing. So just to be clear on that.
Just to clarify a little further, the two items that were cited in the report as being the main cause of the overspend were the highways works and the archaeological works. Are these normally within the control of the developer?
I'm the same, aren't I? As we're looking behind me. It depends on the asset of the County Council. They were required by condition, the archaeology, and it's about ensuring, you know, that condition's met, but it's the level in which it's signed off by archaeology. And I think some items were found for archaeology, and it's the extent of works that was undertaken by that. But I think we as a planning authority got to the point that we kind of had to cease any further investigations on the site.
So those two items consisted of the larger portion of the deficit, not the inability of the developer to control the costs of plaster.
Yes, not in the
and
developer's
bricks.
control at all, no.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, through you, Chair, in terms of the costs, the changes to the building regs since the outline permission was granted was around 1.7 million. The roundabout was 3.88 and the archaeology was 2.64. So although they would have been expecting some costs for that, I think it's fair to say that the increases in costs since the outline stage are going to be around the 4 million mark at least.
Okay, Councillor Carriadar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to echo the floor here. It's easy to compromise on the people who don't have voices. And one of those is these kind of people who are going to live in the affordable homes. If we go in the same trajectory from a socio-economic point of view, Rugby is going to be classed as a very posh area so that we chuck out all the people who are not able to afford to live in Rugby. If that happens, it might be good for this generation, but what happens to the generations going to follow us? So that means my children and your children are going to get a house somewhere in Northumberland or somewhere there because they can't live in Rugby.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, no, and I you know, it's striking that balance, and I absolutely agree that affordable homes need to be provided, and they ought to be provided, and there's policies in place to ensure that that happens. With this particular application, you know, we're governed by our current policy and our national policy, MPPF and MPPG, that, you know, if viability shows otherwise, you know, the affordable housing provision can be altered, and that's what we're governed by here. But by no means moving forward are we going to kind of try and let this happen, as it were. There are other mechanisms in place that we can try and investigate around. If there are other viabilities, there's grant funding. There are other things and other conversations that are to be had and will be had around ensuring that there is a level of affordable provision providing on site, and we will be investigating all avenues.
Okay, Councillor Harrington, then Councillor Stewart. I sense that we're sliding into the debate section of this because, yes, there were, for the earlier part of this section, we've concentrated on the affordability tests, and then we've run into more social arguments. Councillor Harrington, is this a debate issue or a technical issue?
Little bit of a technical. Miller Homes took over the site, is that correct? So, and it was from the previous company who they took it over. That's fine, that'll do me.
Yeah, the previous developer was L&Q, who I believe are developers of social housing. Is that correct?
They do have a affordable housing delivery arm, but they also have a land promotion arm. So I think their intention was always to promote the site rather than develop it for affordable housing, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, and I hate to, sorry, I'll just ask the counterfactual. If L&Q had proceeded with the application, with the development, would they have avoided the extraordinary costs around the highways and archaeological surveys?
I think it's unlikely, because whoever did the work would have the same issues in terms of what they found when they did the archaeological investigation, and they would still be dealing with the county council in terms of delivering the roundabout. So,
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Point of debate, a statement. I mean, we know we've got a big shortfall in affordable housing in the borough. I think this, if we were to push it through, sets a terrible precedent, and it would be a misrepresentation of the people we're here to represent if we were to vote. So I'm going to be quite clear, I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Just to say, yes, and I will be supporting it, because if it doesn't go through, then the implications of it not going through, I think, are quite severe. I think what we need to do is put right what went wrong with this one. And to reiterate, the reviews, the 50% and the 75% reviews are crucial in terms of can they take on more social housing or not. And I speak as somebody that is an advocate of as much social housing as you can bang into a place. But they are not going to move on this at the minute.
Yeah, through you, Chair, just a point of implications of if this wasn't approved. This currently represents 210 houses in our current 5-year land supply. If it isn't coming forward, we lose 210 houses from our land supply, which has current implications to our current 3.7 years supply, and will have implications for our future, our submitted local plan version of going into an examination. So just so you're clear on a previously approved scheme, how it's accounted for in our housing supply and the implications of it otherwise.
Councillor Gillias.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to ask the question, but the officer answered it about the cost of the archaeology. It's a staggering amount of money, isn't it? And that comes off the bottom line. I wonder how many affordable houses that could have built, you see. So this is what we've got to think about. All the hoops that developers have to jump through, how many affordable houses coming off the bottom line? Because they've got to jump through those hoops. I meet developers, builders, that have decided, I'm not doing it. Too much costs available, you know, to move forward, to build it. So they don't do it. And we've got to do something, haven't we? Doing nothing or vote against it, you don't get any houses at all. Because there comes a time when the developers will say, I'm pulling the plug on this, no money in it. So I'm going to move approval for it.
Yeah, we have a proposer for approval. Do we have a seconder? But before we go to that, can I just quickly bring in Councillor Harrington?
I'm going to second Councillor Stewart of not approving this. I think the issue you've got is we're going to set a precedent against the rest of the applications in Rugby.
We just need to clarify.
So I just want to second Councillor Stewart.
Councillor Stewart, did you propose that the application be dismissed?
Yes, Chair.
Right. So we have a proposer and a seconder. We've got to say why. We've got to be comfortable that our reason for refusal is one that won't lead us into further hot water.
So, to clarify, I think the level of drop-off in affordable housing at this site is so far away from the original agreement and the original planning approval, and it does not represent what this council is trying to achieve with regards to affordable housing and providing homes to people that need them. So on that grounds, I don't think that we should be pushing this application through in its current state.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got our legal officer who will perhaps explain the technical point here, and then Councillor Daly.
So thank you, Chair. So I mean that's noted, Councillor Stewart. Unfortunately, we need a policy to say that we're not complying with. As you've heard from your officers, this does actually comply with policy. The other thing I just want members to be aware of a couple of points. So for the first, just to remind members, we're obliged to, the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act basically says we must grant applications that conform with local plan policy unless material considerations dictates otherwise. And we're also obliged to have regard to material considerations, of which the National Planning and Policy Framework is one. National Planning Policy Framework provides that that our developers may make a profit of up to 20%. This application does accord with that. So in the circumstances, if you look at the policy framework that surrounds this kind of application, this does comply with all of those requirements. I understand that there are wider issues that members are concerned about. Those are valid concerns. However, as it relates to this particular application, my advice to you is you don't actually have a valid planning reason to turn this down. The other thing I just wanted to make members aware of, there was a direction from the Secretary of State in March of this year, which basically said, where any planning authority is looking to or resolving to refuse an application where the development would permit more than 150 houses, which this application qualifies for, there is an obligation to send that application to the Secretary of State before it's actually refused, to give the Secretary of State an opportunity to determine whether they should call that application in. That has implications for a number of reasons. One is reputational with the Secretary of State. That also has implications in terms of resource. So I know I've been talking a while, but I just really want members to understand the policy framework within this decision is being made. It is in accordance with your policies. So unfortunately, you don't necessarily have a valid ground that wouldn't lead to a costs or otherwise judgment against the council should it be appealed, and there are other implications in relation to the council's local plan. There are also implications in relation to and the need to refer this to the Secretary of State anyway. So the Secretary of State point is just to point out the Secretary of State may take the power out away from you anyway with this. So there are a lot of factors in play. Just before you make a decision, I think it's really important to understand the gravity of some of those issues. Again, happy to answer questions on those points.
Councillor Daly and then Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I'll just start by saying I will be seconding approval. However, I just want to put on record that this is a really rubbish situation for us. It's horrendous. You know, we demand reasonably 30% affordable housing. You know, I understand in urban areas and built-up urban areas it's trickier to do affordable housing because of the additional costs. But this is open fields that are being developed. It's the easiest and most efficient way for housing developers to build houses around our borough. And they are using these Section 106 contributions again to wriggle out of those expectations that we have. However, I understand the system. I understand that a fancy financial viability assessment has been done, and we've agreed it because we have to. It is a horrendous system. However, I feel like our hands are tied, and I have a great fear for all of the other applications that will be coming forward for South West Rugby. There is absolutely no way we are going to have the expected level of affordable housing in any of those sites, and it's really not acceptable. However, that is the system. They are the rules, and we haven't really got anything we can do to stop that here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I think a lot of people will sympathise with your view. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. In which case I formally withdraw my motion to dismiss this application as there are no clear grounds to do so. I would also like to put on the record that I'm really dissatisfied by the outcome here. I think it's disgraceful.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington.
Well, I'll have to take mine away, but the thing is, the housing company knew what they were buying. Yeah, exactly. They knew that. So how dare they come across and do that? I think it's absolutely disgusting. And then if they're going to, they made £121 million profit last year, so 8 million quid isn't a lot, because at the end of the day, they took the liability on, they took the properties on, they should deliver it, and it's letting Rugby down. So I've got no choice now, but I think Miller Homes need to have a good look at themselves in the mirror and say what they're actually doing, because it actually is wrong.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. These extra costs, are these sort of down to lack of due diligence, really? You know, is there any way that we could go back to that 18.5%? It sort of splits out the cost, doesn't it, really? So it's possibly not the 2 million, it's not the 4 million, it's 2 million. Have we got any options there?
I'm not a quantity surveyor. I used to be a cost and management accountant. I could probably answer the question after spending a week on it, but we've been provided with an expert's report already. The costs that were incurred, they were extraordinary, and they weren't under the control of the developer. If it was all about the cost of cement or bricks, I'd be as hard on them as anybody possibly could be. But we seem to have been boxed in by regulatory requirements, and we're stuck with a situation where either we approve something or we dismiss it. If we dismiss it, the chances are 210 houses and 9 sets of affordable homes won't be built. I'm afraid this is one where we have to hold our nose and decide what we're going to do, but send a clear message back to officers that we expect a robust process at the 50 and 75% point, and that we engage with all relevant parties to ensure that such extraordinary costs on roundabouts and archaeological surveys are not incurred in the future without some very, very good reasons. Now, if you're a developer and you work in an area where previously there's been settlements, you build in this cost in your development, but you can't build it in to the nth degree. And certainly when I was working in construction down in London, the dead Roman scenario was always built into your costs because you knew you were building in areas where there could be previous ancient settlements. It's also the case in Warwickshire. I think it's incumbent on the County Council and other parties to take a reasonable view on this. Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Yeah, just on that actually. As the archaeological costs were so high for this site, and presumably we haven't done archaeological surveys on the rest of that site for the whole Southwest Rugby, was there anything in that site that is making them think we could have this sort of cost again, or is it just whatever it was they found, it's a one-off, it's not going to be elsewhere? I know you can never necessarily know all of that, but is it a site that's likely to have more archaeological issues going forward?
I mean, I know the other South West Rugby applications have done their initial archaeological work as these ones did. I think those developers are well aware of this situation and will be keeping an eye on things. I think also we're now well aware of these issues. And as Helen mentioned earlier, we got to the point where we said, no, this is enough. We are stopping the archaeological work because we have to balance it with all the other needs. I mean, the archaeologists have one job and they could ask for archaeology, you know, to the nth degree. We have to balance whether that impacts on other things. And certainly from this, it is something that we're aware of and we will be taking on board, and I'm sure the other South West Rugby developers also will be. So if they get to a point where the archaeologists are asking for things that will have significant impacts, I would think they will be coming to us and we will then be able to look at it and make that call.
Further debating points? Councillor Brown, yes.
Very quickly to ask for it to be recorded in the minutes that to a councillor, we think this is a deplorable situation, and we will do all we can to work towards better kinds of resolutions with better criteria. Thank you.
And from the Chair, could we also perhaps record that we are aware that Miller Homes is an experienced developer and that we have an expectation that they will improve the position at the 50 and 75% mark. And could officers please report back on that at the appropriate point? Thank you. Right, so the motion to dismiss the application has been withdrawn. We now have to vote on what's before us. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Gillis, you still, and Councillor Daly seconding. Right, those in favour, please. That's unanimous, although I sense many of us are holding our noses. Yeah. Okay, it's carried. The application is approved. Can we go and find Councillor Sanderson? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I was afraid it hasn't been morning. Do we have any advance notice of site visits?
We have none further, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Delegated decisions.
He wasn't listening.
He's asleep. Noted by Councillor Carradore. Right. And there are no items to exclude the public from. Can I thank you for your diligence and due care this evening and your tenacity of lasting this long on such a busy night. Thank you.